Well, good evening, everybody. Special welcome to my colleagues on the Planning Committee. We have 4 officers with us in the room, the glorious Council Chamber at Blackpool Town Hall. And I know we have 1 or 2 people watching us in cyberspace out there. Good evening to you. And I know we have 1 speaker who wants to address us later in the meeting, Mr. Richard Maudsley, and he's out there, I think, and Carl Carrington's coming as well. So we're ready to go, and item 1 on our agenda is declarations of interest, if there be any, from my 6 colleagues and myself. No? We can then pass on to item 2, which is for us to consider the minutes of the meeting we held on the 16th of November. Now, I'm aware that one of our public who spoke to us at the last meeting is unhappy with 1 or 2 points in the minutes, Mr. Brian Holt. And I know he has written in to the department to express his concern and his wish to have the minutes amended to reflect a little more of what he had to tell us. The officers have explained that process is not in our protocol, that these are the minutes of the committee. They are not meant to be a verbatim record of all that was said. We can get that from the video recording, I suppose. They are a synopsis of what is said and of the main decisions. And there isn't a process for anybody other than ourselves to amend the minutes. And I simply put that to you, that there isn't a process where he can intervene or have his comments officially recorded. I think, Councillor Farrell, you did want to speak on the subject.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, he is concerned because in the minutes it does say issues with speeding traffic around the site. That isn't his issue. His issue is, as he spoke at the last meeting, the roundabout and the blind corner, and those are his concerns. And he just wanted those concerns expressed in the minutes.
Well, as I said, I've got to make a ruling on this as chairman of your committee, and it is to the effect that there isn't a process for that to be done. And I can only advise that we accept the minutes as they stand, or if a committee member does have some particular concern or can point out a fault, an error in the minutes, that would be a different story. I can't take it any further, but if anybody wanted to move an amendment, fine, on the minutes to say that they're wrong, they are inaccurate, that's fine. We did have a very good debate about this. If you remember, the decision was to adjourn a decision on the matter before us. Before we wanted more evidence from our highways people, and obviously that's an ongoing matter, and it will come back to us in the new year. And I have no doubt that the concerns that Mr. Holt expressed will be taken into account by our traffic engineers. It is obviously a feeling that he's got, knowing and living on the site, or very close to it, and I suppose his opinion could be useful to our highway engineers anyway. But I strongly suggest that we do not admit a proposal for an amendment from a member of the public. That would be quite out of order. Councillor Stansfield.
Thank you very much, Chair. In light of what we've just been informed, the part in question, we did make a decision on that night to defer it, which was based partly on the information received, that was part of it. And in light of that will come back to us at our next meeting, that this application is presented to us. I'm sure then it will be made quite clear of his feelings again. And because of that, I feel that the minutes as they are at this moment in time should be accepted as a true record of what happened.
Is that seconded? Thank you very much. I'll put that to the vote, that the minutes be approved. Thank you very much. And then item 3, it's a matter of report again, just for noting. I think you will see that Mr Tyers on Midland Road is lodging an appeal against the decision we made to refuse the application for use of that site for a couple of caravans. At the same time, it's reported that Lidl have lost their appeal on the Ankersholm site to extend their car park. The inspector has upheld our decision. And then we're simply noting that. Is that okay? Just as a report. And then item 4, quite a bit of activity there. The numbers being investigated don't go any the less or any the fewer. And you will note we've got 2 enforcement notices being dealt with for Brookfield Road and for Hull Road. And we've got 2 section 215 notices requiring the owners of those properties on Chelford Avenue and Woodfield Road to tidy them up. Again, it's just for noting. And then, colleagues, we are turning to item 5, and at this point, Mr. Richard Maudsley is being invited to join us down the line as agent for the applicant. And this, of course, is the Arnold Medical Centre application on St Anne's Road. It's recommended for refusal for the reasons set out in the report. I'm going to ask Susan if she'd like to come in and introduce it for us.
Thank you, Chair. This application is before members because it affects a community facility and is therefore of more general public interest. The application seeks planning permission for a single-storey rear extension to provide 4 consulting rooms. This extension would project by 16.7 metres from the back of the existing building and be 7.2 metres wide. It would be set off from the boundary by 1.6 metres at the closest point and would have eaves and ridge heights of 3.3 metres and 5 metres. 7 parking spaces would be provided to the front with 13 to the rear and side. The doctor's surgery was created, presumably from a former house, in 1991. Applications for extensions followed later that year, with further applications to extend approved in 1994, 1997 and 2009. The wider area has clearly residential character and the site adjoins a residential property. Members will note that the Head of Transportation and Traffic Management Services has expressed concern about the proposal, as has a nearby neighbour, raising issues of overdevelopment and lack of parking, as well as a concern about hazardous waste. Officers fully appreciate that this is a community facility that plays an important role in ensuring the health and well-being of local residents. It is important that medical facilities are easily accessible for the catchments that they serve, and community-based doctors' surgeries are supported. However, officers are equally minded that this is a site that was not originally intended to accommodate a community medical facility. It has been extended a number of times over the years, and this has been supported to enable its continued operation. The concern is that the surgery is now trying to expand beyond what the site can reasonably accommodate. The extension would sit to the south of the neighbour and run essentially the full length of the boundary. There is screening in place at present in the form of planting, but this falls outside of the applicant's control and could be removed at any time to improve levels of daylight and sunlight into the garden area. In winter, the planting obviously would not provide the same level of screening. As such, the extension is considered to be excessive in scale for the size of the plot and would have an unacceptable impact on the amenity of the neighbour in terms of an overbearing impact and potential loss of daylight and sunlight. Although the Council's Extending Your Home SPD is not strictly applicable here, the principles relating to the impact of extensions on residential amenity are still relevant. The SPD generally permits rear extensions on detached properties to project 3 metres beyond the rear wall of the neighbour plus a set-off distance to the boundary. The proposal would exceed this allowance by around 11.5 metres. In terms of car parking, the existing surgery would require provision of up to 36 spaces, which it already falls well short of, as only 12 spaces are available. If extended as proposed, the surgery would require 48 spaces and only 20 are proposed. This would appear to be a better ratio, but this figure would include 6 tandem spaces at the front, and the Council's highway officer has expressed concern that this would result in cars reversing onto the footway and carriageway to the detriment of highway safety. As such, the proposed parking arrangement is not considered to be acceptable. For these 2 reasons, therefore, the proposal is considered to constitute overdevelopment of the site that would have an unacceptable impact on residential and public amenity and highway safety. These concerns have been balanced against the public benefits of expanding and improving a community facility, but the applicant has not satisfactorily demonstrated that the services are essential and could not be provided from another facility in the locality, or that other options have been fully explored. The council owns the land to the side, and some form of extension here with increased parking to the rear could be explored if the CCG were prepared to acquire the land. The additional parking proposed to the rear, at the side of the rear area, would be on council-owned land, and that's been secured for the purposes of this development. And for these reasons, therefore, members are respectfully recommended to refuse planning permission for the reasons stated in the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Maudsley, it's your turn. Would you like to come in and address the committee?
Hello, good evening. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm Richard Maudsley, Architect and Director at Sunderland Peacock, and I speak in support of this application. The fundamental core of this application is to provide 4 new consulting rooms to an existing, overstretched medical practice who wish to provide medical services to existing and new patients. Simply put, if this application is not approved, there is a real chance that the practice will be forced to stop taking on new patients, or worst case, close. The patient numbers have increased from 4,300 to 5,200 in the last 8 years, 200 in the past year, and continue to expand at approximate rate of 40 to 50 patients per month due to its excellent performance and ratings. The practice is part of the South Primary Care Network, and as such are lucky to have the use of several new types of practitioner roles within the practice, which others in the area are unable to accommodate. These include physiotherapy, podiatrist, a paramedic, a cancer care coordinator, a pharmacist, and a technician. More roles are being planned by the Health Authority, which will increase in number to improve patient access to these clinicians, and thus the health of the community, and reduce the pressure on hospitals. It is viewed as a fantastic opportunity to have access to these clinicians for patients, but they do not have the room to house them all, and at present are struggling to achieve this to provide enhanced care. This will obviously impact negatively both on the health of patients and pressure on hospital if this extension is not approved. The practice is a successful training practice, and at present train 1 trainee GP and 1 foundation doctor at the time, as well as medical students from Manchester and Liverpool universities. These have been they've been approached by the deanery to take on another trainee GP, which will be facilitated by the extra rooms in the proposal, but is not possible at present. Accommodating extra trainee GPs would bring more potential GPs into the region, which will be very beneficial to the patient population of Blackpool, as there is a nationwide shortage, and this is felt acutely in the Blackpool area. Without the extra space, Arnold Medical Centre would be unable to sustain the present expansion of clinicians, and would eventually have to close the patient list, as otherwise they would be unable to operate safely for the patients. This would impact on the present patients and the future need in the area. The practice is well represented with high patient satisfaction in all areas, shown by GP patient results and top position in the recent Blackpool Gazette article. It is the full support of the Clinical Commissioning Group CCG and Health Education England, and there's only been one objection from an adjacent property to the southeast from Lennox Gate, not the neighbouring property. There have been 2 items raised by the planning officer in respect to the application: parking and impact on residential amenity. Whilst the proposal is below the council standard, the increased number of parking spaces is a substantial benefit. We fail to see how the practice and proposal, according to the officer's report, is not considered sustained in its current location, given the majority of patients walk to the surgery and there is a bus stop directly outside. There was no overweighing benefit in the officer's report for this. There is no specific highway objection, only comments on the parking numbers. We have endeavoured to provide additional parking as part of the application. The area of the front will be re-landscaped to allow an increase of 5 new spaces, which will be allocated and managed by staff only, including safe egress onto St Anne's Road. To the rear, where the new extension will be positioned, 2 of the 10 spaces will be replaced by the proposal. However, following discussions with Council Estate Department, it has been agreed and secured to extend the entrance area and provide additional 11 parking spaces, which will be surfaced with tarmac. The total site increase will therefore be 8 parking spaces for the site. Weighed against the benefit of this proposal will provide, it is felt the application is sustainable and should be considered a central and accessible location. Second issue raised is regarding the impact on residential amenity. The proposed design provides the most viable design in which to extend existing spaces without negatively impacting the existing dwelling or surrounding area. Whilst it is acknowledged that there is a former dwelling, a boundary to a dwelling, we have again endeavoured to amend the design scheme to accommodate this. Since the original submission, the proposal has been offset further into the site by 1 metre away from the fence. The proposed levels cannot be lowered as it is a key consideration to provide a continued floor level to DDA standards through the building. There remains substantial greenery to the boundary behind an existing 2 metre fence, which will shield the proposal to the neighbouring dwelling. The scheme presents the most logical, economical and community benefiting design solution for the practice to provide a much required extension which is sympathetic to the existing building and street scene. The external aesthetic reflects the existing character along the hip roof, reducing massing. The planning officer's report starts by setting out the council's 2 priorities, and that this application conflicts with the second priority relating to communities, creating strong communities and increasing resilience. As has been stated, it's clear that the proposal will only increase the fantastic service which this medical centre provides to the community and wishes to extend through this proposal. Item 11.5 mentions the direct community benefits in response to the pandemic and contradicts the previous statement in saying development that proposes the improvement of existing health services and aligns with the council's aim to address local health priorities should be afforded significant positive weight in planning balance. We request that you agree with this statement and provide significant weight to support this medical centre in the most challenging of times in order to provide enhanced facilities. We ask you to vote to approve this application to allow the practice to continue to serve the community. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Maudsley. We've listened to your representations with great interest, and we appreciate your wish to see this surgery given the added space that it clearly needs. The main concern that we have, of course, is for the effect on the amenity of the neighbourhood, the car parking and highways implications, and a feeling by our officers that this is very much a development that would constitute intensive and inadequately justified overdevelopment of the site. There have already been 7 extensions, I think, in the past, which of course has added to the density, and this would only increase that particular difficulty. Colleagues, your feelings about the application? Vice Chairman, Councillor O'Hara.
I think I basically agree with what you just said. I went to have a look at the site this morning, and it's a very tight bit of land where there's 6 or 7 parking spaces. It looks very sort of cramped up. And I'm not sure whether this would be an asset to the actual building as well, because it just overtake the area.
Yeah. Councillor Stansfield.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, like you've just said, there are many extensions that's already been applied to this this property to make what I would imagine would now be basically a rabbit warren inside. Most modern day medical centres are trying to get to the open status, fit for purpose usage. I don't see what this what this would benefit from an extra bit added onto the back of an already much altered building, leaving very little space for safe car parking for entrance and exit. And I totally agree with the officer's comments that it's not one really that we should be looking to approve. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, Councillor Farrell.
I've just got one question, Chair, for me. We're talking about the land on the side. Has the CCG approved the council about purchasing that land?
As I understand it, there has been an agreement reached between estates and the CCG for them to use the part of the green space directly adjacent to the existing car park, but the council owns all of the green space to the side, so it's whether more of it could be taken up. But whether that's something we support, obviously we need to see a scheme. But yeah, it's one option that could be explored on this particular site.
Councillor Baker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think there's a bit of speculation going on here about what it's like internally. Unless you've actually been in the place, you wouldn't know, and I certainly haven't. But I used to live on that street on Lennox Gate. Next door to it, there's a sewerage pumping station, and then next door to that, there's an electrical substation, which extend further towards Lennox Gate than this particular building does. So, if they could buy some of that, more of that land, they might be able to do a lot better with it than what they are proposing now. But without actually going inside and looking at it, I think we're just speculating really on it being a rabbit warren inside. I don't know.
Well, it's the application is what we have to decide. It's what's in front of us, isn't it?
Of course.
Anybody else? What are your wishes? Do you approve the recommendation, or does anybody want to move? Councillor Stansfield.
Councillor Harrow.
What are you moving?
Councillor Harrow was going to speak.
Councillor Stansfield.
Chair, I will move the officer's recommendation that we refuse the application.
Is that seconded? It's seconded. Those in favour of that proposal, please show. That's a unanimous decision to refuse the application. I don't think any of us doubts the force of the representations from Mr. Maudsley that this surgery drastically needs this added space to cater adequately for its patients. The question, of course, is this the right place for that provision? Can it be accommodated on site? And I think committee feels very strongly that it can't, and it would be better if the practitioners were to find a more attractive, a more congenial site. That concludes our businesses this evening, colleagues. The meeting is adjourned until next time, when we shall meet again on the 25th of January. Thank you so much.